Stay with me a moment. My child, you have been fighting a current I sent to carry you. You thought the movement meant danger. You thought the change meant rejection. But I am telling you now, you are not drowning. You are being carried. Right now, as you stay with me through this message, let that one truth begin to loosen the grip in your chest. Come a little closer. There is no rush here, and there is nothing you have to fix before you are allowed to rest in this. I am not asking you to be calm before you draw near. I am asking you to draw near while you are still tired, still uncertain, still doing the math in the dark. That is exactly the kind of heart I lean toward. Not the one that has it all arranged. The one that is honest enough to be weary in my presence. And before this message ends, I want to bring you back to one sentence that has been written down for a very long time. A line I put in my word for people who felt like they were swimming against everything, exhausting their own strength against a flow that would not turn. Here is the edge of it now, so you can carry it while I speak. Then your peace would have been like a river. Hold that. I will give you the whole of it later, and I will show you what every word in it means. For now, just let the shape of it stay near, while I show you why your heart keeps reading the moving water as a threat, instead of as a hand reaching for you under the surface. So let me start where you actually are, not where you pretend to be when someone asks how you are doing, where you actually are. I see you. I see the one who has been treading water for so long that the treading has become a whole way of living. You do not even notice the effort anymore. It is just the low hum under your day, the tightness that never fully leaves, the bracing you do before you have even gotten out of bed. You wake already behind. You lie down already behind. And somewhere in between you keep moving, because stopping has begun to feel dangerous, as though the moment you rest the water will close over your head. There is the mother counting what is left after the bills are paid, doing the sum again at the kitchen table because the numbers did not change the first 3 times, and the 4th time only made her chest tighter. There is the one who finished a long day of work and still felt, somewhere underneath the exhaustion, that it was not enough, that they themselves were not enough, that no amount of effort would ever be enough to feel safe. There is the person who keeps a list inside their chest of everything that could still go wrong, and reads it on a loop when the room finally goes quiet. The single one of you who watches other people's lives the way you would watch a lit window from a cold street, sure that whatever holds them up was never built for you. I think of the one who opened a blank message to a friend last week, started to type how things really were, looked at the honest words sitting there on the screen, and deleted them one letter at a time before anyone could read them. I think of the one who keeps a running list of pros and cons for a decision they have been too afraid to make, adding to it at midnight, never reaching the bottom of it. None of that is hidden from me. I am not standing at a distance from it. I am near the part of you that is too tired to even name what it is tired of. The part that cannot find the words anymore and has stopped trying. I know the particular hour when it gets loudest too. For some of you, it is the middle of the night, when the house has gone still, and there is no task left to hide inside of, and the worry rises like water in a basement you cannot find the source of. For some of you, it is the moment right before you walk back into a room full of people who need you to seem fine. You square your shoulders in the hallway. You arrange your face. You decide to keep treading because the people you love are watching the surface, and the surface has to look calm. I see the cost of that. I see how much strength it takes to look like you are not struggling. I am not asking you to keep that performance up with me. With me, you can let the surface break. And let me tell you something about all that effort you have been pouring out. It was not wasted. and it was not foolish. You have been faithful in a hard place. You have kept showing up, kept providing, kept loving people who did not always notice the weight of it. The problem was never that you cared too little or tried too little. The problem is that you were taught to do it alone, with your own 2 arms against the whole river, and no one ever told you the river was on your side. But listen carefully, because this is where fear has been lying to you. Notice with me how the prayer has changed. It used to be long. It used to have words, real ones, the kind you meant. Now some days it is only a breath you push out toward the ceiling, a single sigh that you are not even sure counts. It counts. I have heard every one of them. The sigh you think is too small to be a prayer is the prayer I lean closest to hear. I do not need the eloquence. I never did. I need the heart, and the heart is in the sigh. And I know where this began. The picture of me you have been carrying was painted for you, slowly, over years, by hands that may have meant well, and by hands that did not. You were handed a version of me who stands on the far bank, arms folded, watching to see whether you will make it across on your own strength. A God who waits to be impressed. A God who keeps a careful ledger of how hard you are trying and how often you fall short of it. The loudest voice in your beginning told you that love had to be earned, and you quietly decided, I must be the same. You have been swimming toward a God who you assumed was checking your form. I want you to know, with everything in me, that is not who I am. I have never once been the one standing dry on the other side, measuring your strokes, frowning at your speed. I have never folded my arms at your struggle. The arms you imagined, crossed in judgment, have been open the whole time, reaching down into the water you are in. Open both of your hands where they are resting, and turn the palms up toward the ceiling. You do not have to make them do anything. You do not have to feel a certain way for it to mean something. Just let them open, the way a hand opens when it finally lets go of a rope it has been gripping too long, the rope going raw across the palm. That small motion is its own kind of honesty. It tells the truth your mouth has been too tired to say. It says, I cannot hold all of this, and that confession is not weakness. In my kingdom, it is the doorway. So here is the lie I want to break with you now, gently, because it has been loud and it has not been kind. You came to believe that the moving water in your life was working against you, that every change, every loss, every season that swept something away from you was proof that the river of your life had turned hostile. So you learned to fight it, to swim upstream, to square your shoulders against the flow and push and push and push. You exhausted yourself against something you could never outmuscle, and when you got tired, you read the tiredness as failure. You thought, if I were stronger, if I had more faith, I would not be this worn out. So you swam harder. And the water kept moving and you kept losing ground, and you began to believe the losing was your fault. Here is where the lie breaks. You were never meant to overpower the river. You were meant to be carried by it. The version of me you inherited would have you believe that the whole point of faith is to fight the water harder, to grit your teeth and force the flow to bend to your timing, to bargain and strain until it finally goes the direction you demanded. That is not faith. That is fear wearing faith's clothing. Faith is what happens when you finally stop thrashing and let the water hold you up. When you trust that the one who set the river in motion set it in motion toward your good. It was never an accident you have to survive. It was a direction I chose with you in mind. Think about what a swimmer learns when they are going under. As long as they fight, as long as they flail and grasp and try to climb out of the water using the water itself, they sink. The very moment they stop fighting, lean back, and trust the water to hold them, the surface lifts them up. The thing that felt like death becomes the thing that bears their weight. Nothing about the water changed. What changed was the swimmer stopped treating it as an enemy. That is what I'm asking of your heart. Not more effort, a different posture. Stop climbing out, lean back, let it hold you. Now let my words steady the part of you that has been bracing. There is something here that is harder to believe, so I will say it plainly. The current has not only been holding you, it has been guarding your heart while it carries you. Where this water begins in me, the source of it is tenderness. I do not move you the way a flood moves debris, tossing it wherever the chaos sends it. I move you the way a hand cups water to keep it from spilling. There is care in the carrying. In my affection, I keep your heart the way a riverbed keeps the river, holding its shape, giving it somewhere to run, but never gripping so tightly that it stops flowing, never letting it scatter and dry out on the rocks. You have felt the moving and called it loss. What it has actually been is keeping. I have been guarding the most fragile part of you even in the seasons when you could not feel my hand at all. Because that is the other thing the wrong picture of me stole from you. It told you that if you could not feel me, I must not be there. But the riverbed does not stop holding the river on the days the swimmer cannot see it. The carrying does not pause when your feelings go numb. So much of what you mistook for my absence was simply the deep work happening beneath a surface too churned up for you to read. I was never gone. I was underneath, where the real work happens. Think for a moment about the seasons you would now call your lowest. The years you would skip past if you were telling the story of your life. You assumed I had stepped back in those years, that my silence was a verdict, that the absence of any feeling meant the absence of me. Look again. Those were not the years I left. Those were the years I carried you the most and let you see it the least. Because if you had seen it, you would have leaned on the feeling instead of on me, and the feeling would have failed you the first hard day. I held you in a way you could not yet feel, so that one day you could trust me in a way that does not depend on feeling at all. And I need to be honest with you about what the good is. The good you are being carried toward, because the world has sold you a smaller and cheaper version of it. Do not miss this. Movement is not the same as abandonment. The promise I am making you is not that your situation turns around on a schedule you can mark on a calendar. I am not handing you a date by which the money arrives, the diagnosis clears, the door opens, the person walks back through it. I will not give you a counterfeit and dress it up in my word. The people who promise you a guaranteed delivery by a certain afternoon are not speaking for me, and when their date passes, your faith should not have to sync with it. What I am offering you is something the world cannot put a price on and a thief cannot reach. Peace. My presence in the deep place where you were sure you would be alone. A heart that is kept and watered even when the surface of your life looks like cracked ground. Belonging that does not rise and fall with the news of your week. Pardon for everything you have been quietly carrying as a debt. The spirit of my own life moving steadily through the very places in you that you thought had gone to permanent drought. That is the inheritance. That is the headline. Everything else, the things you are aching for that you can hold in your hands, those are real, and I have not forgotten them, and I will tend to each of them in my own wisdom and my own timing. But they are chapters underneath the headline. They are not the thing your life rests on. If they were, your peace would rise and fall with them, and you would be right back to treading water. The thing your life rests on is that you are carried, and that does not change when your circumstances do. Notice the order of it, because the order is everything. I did not start by promising to fix your week. I started by promising you myself. The first gift is presence, and presence is the one gift that does not expire when the season turns. From inside that gift, you can face the things that are still unresolved without being undone by them, because you are no longer facing them as someone who might be dropped at any moment. You are facing them held. Let me say it as plainly as I can, because the difference between the two has cost you years. If I gave you only the things you can lose, I would be giving you a peace you would have to defend with your whole life, a peace that any bad afternoon could drain. Something that only flows when the bills are paid is not a river at all. It is a puddle that depends on the weather. I did not make you for a puddle. The peace I am putting in you is the kind that is still there at the bottom of the worst news, still moving under the hardest week, because its source is not the news and not the week. Its source is my own self, and my own self is not going anywhere. When you learn to drink from that, you stop being at the mercy of every change on the surface. The circumstance can do what it will, and the deep water keeps carrying you, because the deep water was never the circumstance. It was me. Now, let me read you the sentence I promised you at the start. I want you to know where it came from before I say it, because it was not written in a calm season for comfortable people. It was written for the ones who had run out of strength. I spoke it to a people who had stopped listening to me. They had wandered far from home. They had hardened their hearts over years until they could not hear me anymore. They had lost their freedom and were living in exile in a foreign place, and the ache of their own choices had finally caught up with them. I did not speak this line to shame them or to rub their failure in their faces. I spoke it the way a parent speaks to a grown child who has run themselves into the ground, with a grief that is almost entirely love. I told them what their lives could have been and could still become if they would only turn and stop fighting the water and let me lead them home again. I did not write it for scholars to dissect. I wrote it for the tired ones who had given up on the idea that there was any peace left for them. Read it slowly. This is what I said. Isaiah chapter 48, verse 18. Oh, that you had paid attention to my commandments. Then your peace would have been like a river, and your righteousness like the waves of the sea. Stay with that for one moment before you move on. Sit with the picture of it before you read another line. Your peace would have been like a river. Notice carefully what I did not compare your peace to. I did not say your peace would have been like a pond, still and small, and easily disturbed by the first stone thrown into it. I did not say like a cup that empties the moment you take a single sip from it. I did not say like a puddle that the sun could erase by afternoon. I said like a river. And a river is not fragile. A river is not something you fill up once and then have to guard against running out. A river is fed from a source far upstream, a source you did not build and could never drain even if you tried. It keeps coming. It keeps moving. When the heat comes, the surface evaporates, but the spring is still feeding it from underneath, where you cannot see, where you do not have to manage it. The river does not depend on your effort to keep flowing. It depends on its source. That is the peace I made you for. Not a peace you manufacture by clearing every last problem off your plate, which you have never once managed to do and never will. Not a peace that depends on the surface of your life, going smooth and staying that way. A peace fed from a source upstream of your circumstances entirely. A peace that keeps arriving precisely because its source is me, and not your situation, and not your performance, and not the day's verdict on whether things are going well. And hear what I did not say, because this matters as much as what I did. I did not say, then your problems would have disappeared. I did not say, then nothing hard would ever reach your shore again. The river does not promise you a life with no storms over it. Rivers run through hard country. They cut through stone. They pass under cold skies and through long droughts on the surface. The promise is not that the weather changes. The promise is that the flow does not stop. A difficult day is not the river running dry. It is only weather on the water. The current underneath keeps moving exactly where it was moving before, and it is still carrying you, even on the day the sky is its darkest. And then look at the second half of what I said, because I did not stop at the river. I said your righteousness would have been like the waves of the sea. The waves. Watch what waves do. They come in and they spend themselves on the shore, and you think they are finished. And then another one comes, and another. They do not stop because the tide once went out. The whole ocean is behind them, an unimaginable weight of water pressing each wave forward in its turn. When I tell you that your standing with me is like the waves of the sea, I am telling you that my acceptance of you is not a single arrival you have to keep earning back every time you fall. It returns. It keeps returning. Even after the worst season of your life pulled the water back so far that you stood on the bare sand and thought it was gone for good, it returns. Because the whole sea is behind it, and the whole sea is my love, and my love has no shoreline where it stops. Think about how differently you have been living. You have been treating your standing with me like a single high tide you reached once, and have been losing ground from ever since, as though every failure pulls the water a little further out, and one day there will be nothing left but bare sand. That is exhausting, and it is not true. Your acceptance was never a level you have to defend. It is a tide governed by the moon and not by your performance, coming in on its own appointed rhythm, on the good days and the failing days alike. You do not summon the next wave. You could not stop it if you tried. It is already on its way to you, carried by the whole weight of an ocean you did not fill and cannot empty. There is one more thing in this verse I do not want you to miss, because it is the most tender part of all. I began that sentence with a sigh of my own. Oh, that you had. It is the sound a parent makes, not a judge. It is longing, not condemnation. I was not standing over those exiles with a list of charges. I was aching over what they had missed, the way you would ache watching someone you love refuse the very thing that would heal them. That is the voice this whole message is spoken in. Not the voice that scolds you for treading water, the voice that aches to see you finally lean back and be held. When I look at your striving, I do not feel anger. I feel that same oh that you would. Oh, that you would stop fighting and let me carry you the rest of the way. Now look back at what I told you at the very beginning of this message. I said your heart keeps reading the moving water as a threat instead of as a hand. Here is the answer to why. You were taught, somewhere back at the start, that peace was a thing you had to hold on to with white knuckles against a world forever trying to take it from you. So every time something shifted or slipped away, you panicked and grabbed and tried to freeze the water in place. But peace was never a thing to clutch. It was a river to be carried by. The moving was never your enemy. The moving was me, taking you somewhere your own strength could not have reached, somewhere you would never have agreed to swim to if you had known the way. And here is what that means for the situation you are carrying right now, the specific one, the one that came to mind the moment I started speaking. You have been reading its movement as proof that I have abandoned you. The thing that changed, the thing that slipped, the season that ended before you were ready for it to end. You have lain awake assigning it a meaning, and the meaning you assigned was rejection. But you read it wrong. Do not miss this. Movement is not the same as abandonment. The same current that took something away is the current that is carrying you towards something your hands could not have built. I am not asking you to be glad about what the water took. I'm asking you to stop concluding, from the fact that it moved, that I stopped loving you. The movement was never the verdict. The keeping was the verdict. and the keeping has not stopped for a single second. And the reason you can trust the river at all, the reason this is not just a comforting picture, is the cross. The deepest water did not keep my son. He went down into the lowest place there is, the very place where you were most afraid you would drown alone, and death itself closed over him completely. And still he rose. So the deepest water in your story does not get the final word either. Sit with what that means for the very thing you are most afraid of. There is a place in your story you have never said out loud, a depth you are certain would be the end of you if it ever came. You have organized your whole life around not going under there. But my son has already been to the bottom of the deepest water there is, and he came up from it, and he did not come up alone. He came up holding the keys to that exact place. That is why I can promise you a peace like a river and not be lying to you. The cross is why this river cannot run dry. The source is secured. It was secured at a hill and at a tomb that could not hold him, and nothing has been able to dam it since. Your peace does not rest on your grip. It rests on his. So here is something small you can carry into the rest of your week. It is not a heavy thing. You do not have to do it perfectly, and you do not have to feel anything in particular for it to be working. The next time you feel that old tightness rise, that bracing in your shoulders, the breath you are holding without realizing you are holding it, do this. Soften your jaw. Most of us clench it without ever noticing, and the body holds the whole fight there. All that pushing against the current, locked into the muscle. Let it loosen by 1 degree. You do not have to relax everything. Just give it 1 degree. And as it loosens, say one quiet line to yourself, under your breath, so low that only I can hear it. I am being carried. Not I am fixing it. Not I am holding it all together. Not I am strong enough. Just, I am being carried. You may not feel anything the first time you try it. You may feel a little foolish the 5th time. You may forget to do it at all for 3 days and have to begin again, and that is allowed too. But somewhere around the 30th time, when the tightness rises and the words come almost on their own, before you have decided to say them, you will notice that the water did not become your enemy after all. You will notice that you have stopped swimming upstream against a God who was never standing on the far bank. You will notice, almost without meaning to, that the current was always going your way, and had been the whole time, even in the seasons you were certain you were going under. I am not asking you to feel carried before you choose to trust that you are. The feeling will come, slowly, the way warmth comes back into cold hands, long after they are already near the fire. What I am asking is much smaller than a feeling. I am asking you to stop bracing for 1 breath, to loosen your grip on the rope for the length of 1 sentence, to let 1 moment go by where you are not the one holding everything up. You will be surprised how much of your strength was going into a fight I never asked you to be in. And if you want 1 more thing to hold, here it is. At the very start of your day, before the list of worries finds you and starts pulling, give me the first minute. You do not need a long prayer. You do not need the right words. You can simply turn your face up the way the swimmer turns their face toward the air and say, "Carry me." That is enough. That single sentence reorders the whole day, not because it changes your circumstances, but because it changes who you think is holding them. You begin as